So many things to do, miles to go before I sleep. Miles to go before I sleep. Deep cut. All the way back to high school. and and since this became a topic, conversation over the last couple of days, high school was a long time ago. they had a breakfast pack. Breakfast Club breakfast pack. It was a brat pack. Getting things mixed up. The Rat Pack. So there's three things I got all mixed up in my head. The Rat Pack, old Brat Pack, new Breakfast Club. Semi relates to the Brat Pack. The Breakfast Club had a reunion a couple months back for, I don't know, whatever anniversary it was that they made the movie. Probably 40, something like that. They got old. But then again, so did I. So miles to go before I sleep. They don't even teach that in school anymore. Robert Frost. The road less traveled. Might be a different one. They all get jumbled in my head. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on that. I had many things to say about my English major / whatever back in the day. So yes, this is the day after the event ended, AnimeNorth 2025, and I talked about it during a very loud, my eyes itchy all of a sudden, a very loud day at the festival there, the convention, and so I don't know if my voice came through clearly. There are many, a litany, a bevy, a whole list of deficiencies from the layout. But even with all those deficiencies, it went over pretty well. so I am very self-effacing and self-deprecating and blah, blah, blah. I, being the master and commander of the layout, noticed the deficiencies, and everybody else said, "Oh, this is great." So that's what always happens. I am, as a lot of people are, some people should be, I am my own worst critic. But on the flip side, whatever. So, many questions this show, and I really appreciated that. I mentioned this before at other shows, and which were utterly fantastic. Where I'm gonna say every show has a different attraction, shall we say, and AnimeNorth being anime, Japanese anime, manga, and all that other stuff. There was a lot of cosplay, like a lot, like at least 50% people were at least semi-dressed up as something. The other 40% were wearing t-shirts of whatever they liked, like in the anime community. I saw 2 Starfleet uniforms, which was neat. I talked to one guy. Actually, I talked to both of them. I didn't even notice it because, again, I don't know why. But I was talking to this guy for a while, elderly, kind of looked like Jean-Luc. And surprisingly, he was wearing the white formal jacket from Star Trek 9 and 10. I think they wore the same uniforms in 10 at Riker's wedding. But so that white with the gold trims and whatever, I go, hey! After talking to him for 10 minutes, hey! Hey, you're dressed up like Jean-Luc. Mr. Oblivious here. I wasn't expecting Starfleet uniforms, but anyway. The other guy had, it wasn't Lower Decks. But it definitely wasn't the TNG or DS9 or Voyager, so I think it was one of the newer ones. I don't know. It had a kind of a glossy diamond pattern. It was still a red shirt in the TNG DS9 style, but it had the black in the top, and it really, it could have been the movies. I don't know, doesn't matter. But him and I talked for a little bit. That was nice too. But most of it's cosplay, fantastic. Most of it, I would say 90% of it was really good cosplay. 10%, not for me. Again, my whole point on these type of shows is people want to go there to let their inner appreciation out. And so I like to believe I was not judgy. I want to adhere to the not judgy, because I have 750,000 pieces of plastic bricks in my basement. And so saying, hey, who would do that? Who would do this? So in the end, we all have our little foibles and appreciations and hobbies. So what I did do is I sat back and I appreciated, again, like I always say, I appreciated the effort. I don't get it. I really don't get it. But I appreciated the effort that was put into the cosplay when it was done nice. Like very few, but some of those, like they just woke up in the morning and threw something on and went out the door. Some people put a lot of effort into their hair, their makeup, the costume, the way they walked, the way they flowed, all that stuff. Fantastic, like just perfect. As I don't know a lot of Japanese anime besides like Sailor Moon from back in the day and Battle of Planets, which nobody dresses up like, Star Blazers, which I saw a few uniforms a few years ago, which I really I appreciated that. There was nothing. There was Sonic the Hedgehog, so the video games too. Narturo, did I say Narturo? I always mispronounce that, but a few of those guys, and every once in a while I thought, hey, you're some sort of video game, Final Fantasy 102, whatever it was. So I was wrong, which is not a shock. But again, I appreciated the effort. I can't keep on saying this enough. I love other people's passion. I might not be remotely interested or care about what they're passionate about, but I love their passion, and I'll sit there forever while they're talking about it. There was a few people in Sailor Moon costumes, and of course, one of our good friends in Toro Lug has brick figs, blockheads of the original 5 Sailor Moon people. Moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter, and the cats and Tuxedo Mask done in blockheads, which are the cutest things in the entire universe, by the way. I also did notice this, and as me, I can't believe I did notice this. She also made the 4 main characters lower decks, brick heads. And I'm going, how did I go through a day and a half at the show and not notice Boimler? So I was like, really? Oblivious. Our displays were great. Our displays were awesome. I'm going to say that there was not a single average or even remotely close to above average. They were all excellent to wonderful. They were 95% and above every single display there at the show, except for this guy. Every other display there was utterly fantastic. I loved it. I loved, and I didn't expect this. I was not expecting. We bought the apartments again. If you ever played Lego Tower, Toro Lug years ago started this collaboration where you can build your own apartment for the tower, and I basically saw the same ones for a few shows in a row, and I just kind of started ignoring it because it's basically the same. I walked by, and all of a sudden I double take that every single apartment in the towers at the show, and there's like 6, 12, 18, 24, 32. I think there's 32 of them. New, fantastic, every one of them. And they even had some more on the table because they couldn't fit them into the tower. I'm going, that tower collab. I mean, I love Brickopoly. I thought Toro Lug was just knocked it out of the park with Brickopoly for a couple of years they ran that. Chef's kiss. And this Little Fig Big World, also fantastic. And I can talk about that, but maybe another video. But the apartments for the Lego Tower is just the imagination that goes into creating something unique that fits into that little very, very restrictive size. Loved it, absolutely loved it. So other things, like I don't know all the names of people displayed, but all of it was fantastic. Buffalo was there, represented, excuse me, which was great. And they did the big huge comic book mosaic, got the people to build it, the attendees to build. They got a 16 by 16 base plate, and then they had to go the 1 by 1 bricks with the various colors, and they did Naruto. I think it's Naruto. I'm mispronouncing it. And we thought it was going to take the entire weekend to finish because it was like a lot. We were done by Saturday, like early noon, just like in the afternoon, because it was just packed in that build area for the mosaic. He did the same thing. Ruffalo did the same thing when we did Niagara Falls Comic Con last year, except it was Captain Canuck, which is fantastic. So that's a wonderful thing for interactive for people to do. They can build the 16 by 16 and they plug it into the big picture. The other one was the play brick. Always a hit for the kids. Just play brick. There was one meltdown that I witnessed. There was, well, 1.5, but I'll say one. And the mom was fantastic. So I was standing by the layout, as I'm wont to do, standing by the layout, and all of a sudden Sandy goes, "Oh, that kid's losing it." And I look over, and just a couple feet off our little roped off area, there's this little kid, couldn't have been 4 or 5, it's just crying and crying. Grandmom's done talking to him like, weird, you promised, and blah blah. And I went over there. I said, "Oh, because the kid wanted," he was always pointing to the layout. I think he wanted to put the layout. I said, "There's play brick over there." She said, "We just came from there." So it's like, oh, okay. And it's time to go home. He's had a busy day. This was late in the afternoon on Saturday. And the kid was just hyped up the entire day. He just she said he had a fantastic day through everything. And now he's just overtired and overexcited and whatever. So he's having a bit of a meltdown. And being a dad now, looking back at my previous life of having a 4-year-old, 12 years ago now, oh my goodness, I appreciate that. So it's like, and the other one was, he was a little, and again, wearing a Spider-Man outfit, because that reminded me of Josh too, because Josh had a Spider-Man hoodie that he would not stop wearing for years, between 3 and 5 or 6, whatever. And he wanted to jump out of the carriage, the little baby carriage, the stroller, whatever. And I don't know what that was. And play with the layout. But the parents were very good this year. The parents were, they're good most years. There was one damage. And I wasn't near the layout. I was actually somewhere else talking to people over there with the other displays. And all of a sudden this person comes up to me with the white monorail vehicle in her hands in pieces and says, "It left off the rails." And I'm going, sure. Sure. I've been thinking about this forever. That one loop of monorail is at the corner front, which is usually closest to the barriers, and you can just reach in and grab it and walk away. What I think happened in this case is that, again, they were timed, and we'll get into that in a second, to stop every loop, again, with the sensors and whatever, so there's timing to stop right there at the farthest, closest to the audience as possible, and it just stops every time. And it counts to 10 seconds and does it again. And somebody probably thought it was stuck, so they tried to push it and it fell off. So that's what happened. But all the pieces were there, and I put it back together and I put it back on. The one thing is the lights didn't come back on at the bottom, so I'm sure if I take the whole thing apart, which I will have to do anyway, I will get the lights working again. But it worked for the rest of the show. So about that, and I talked about this during the actual show, it was a bit of work to get all the various loops working. Right out of the box, after setting the whole thing up, I only had 2 loops working. The shuttle carrier loop and the top loop were working. The other loops were not working at all. And I didn't know if it was the RCX. I didn't know if it was the wiring. I didn't know if it was the monorail motors. I didn't know if it was the pickups. I didn't know there was 5 or 6 different things that could have stopped these things from working. And I had to go through each one and test it all. And so Friday afternoon, after the show started at 5, I started, because it was a static display for a while, by the way. And I was okay with that. Because it was still garnering interest from people out there. Because I left the power supply, that wonderful gray box that I did videos on before. I left my power supply right over there in the corner, buried underneath other boxes and bags of Lego that I just completely forgot about, because I didn't want to sit in the garage over the winter, electronic parts and all that. So I just put it in the corner, and of course things built up over it over winter. So I didn't even think about it when I loaded the van Friday morning to go to the show. So I get to the show and I start the whole thing up, and the whole thing is completely set up. And I go, oh, I'm gonna go plug it in now. And it was that exact second, it was just like that movie trope that you see, where the person who all of a sudden remembers that they left the thing back home, and you see the zoom camera go all the way back home and be right there. The good part is the saving grace, the wonderfulness of the serendipitous part of this is that Sandy didn't come with me on Friday to the show, because Josh had a football game at 3 o'clock. And this is my first football game, so I was a little bit sad. I missed Josh, the first football game that Josh played. I've watched every other football game that so this is my first time I missed watching Josh play football, because I had to go to the show, which is fine. And so Sandy had to, she was at the game. He got a touchdown. And he got a whole bunch of first downs. That's my kid. And so, so she, after the game, they came home to get everything ready to go to the show. So I called Sandy at 5 o'clock. Have you left yet? Or yeah, 3, whatever it was. Have you left yet? Nope. I left a box downstairs. Of course, it's the heaviest box because it's full of electronic parts. So she was not appreciative of the fact that she had to carry that up the stairs. She had to dig it out too, by the way. So I will remember that next time. And then she brought it. So for the first half hour of the actual show, there was no power to the layout, and people were still gawking. So I even as a static display, it's pretty good. So then I plug it in, plug all the RCXs in, turn everything on. There was one RCX that lost its firmware over the winter. The batteries probably died, so I have my laptop and I re-downloaded the firmware and I plugged all the wires in again. I had to figure that out because again, they're not perfectly labeled yet, which is something I did not do back in the robot days. Every port was labeled and color coded, but so I had to figure that out between sensors and motor outputs and blah blah blah. So two loops worked right off the bat. The other two loops I got working within the hour or two, and the train loop wasn't working at all. And I was okay with that. I got 4 monorails moving around. The 2 of them that I got working were just connected to the train controller, so they were running all the time. And I said, I'm not going to bother trying to get them onto the RCX because that's just too much effort. And of course, then Saturday morning showed up, and I said, I got to try to get it. And so I got all 4 monorails working on the RCX, so they would stop at all the stations. Some of the timing was a little off. I did not care about that. I let them stop in the middle of the track, in the middle of nowhere, which is fine. I'll worry about that when I get the bricks and sticks. So the motors were saved because again, they were running half the time. That's why I do it that way. But of course, having the train stop, little things flying around here. So that worked out fine. And then, so it was Sunday morning when I thought, maybe because I got a few spare minutes here, maybe I'll work on the train issue. Because I tried Friday and Saturday morning, and I wasn't getting the train working. And so if you're a 9-volt train person, the old 9-volt, you will remember the wonderful little 2x3-ish bricks that had the power connector that touched the rails. And of course, those wires zombified, as we all know. So I replaced all wires in 2 or 3 sets of those connection points, and I thought they were working just fine. I don't know what happened. It doesn't matter. All of a sudden, I got it in my head. I had a whole bunch of my Dave made, thanks to battery powered bricks. Dave made 9-volt wires, and I just grabbed one of them, one of those little 6-inch pieces, and I ripped off one end, and I had exposed wire on both, and so I plugged that into the train controller, and I touched the rails, and all of a sudden the train started moving. So it was the connector points. And I said, after all these years, because that's happened to us a few times, even at other shows, old shows, RTL Toronto shows, where somebody had to go grab another connection 9-volt connector to the train track. I'm going, why am I fighting with this? Like, for the love of everything, why am I fighting with this when I have modified stuff before? I have copperized monorail track and soldered wire to it. So why, for the love of everything, am I not soldering a 9-volt wire to a track, which I'm going to be doing soon, by the way. So I'm giving you a heads up, by the way, so you don't have to watch it if you don't want to, but I'm going to be soldering wire directly to the rails. I got a whole box of rails. That's a whole other video. But and then that problem ceases to exist. And I'm going to make the wire long enough to get down to the RCX. So one connector to the RCX, not going from wired hop to wherever it is, because that one stretch of railway track is right outside the back closest to the control unit, because that's where I put it. And that's where I put the light sensor for that. So as soon as I did that, like I taped, because I didn't have a soldering iron at the show, I taped the exposed wire to the outside of the rail, the steel rail on both sides, and ran the wire underneath and plugged it into the thing, ran the entire show. And then I got the sensor working, and it stopped without any issue. It stopped and go at all the train stations, so it ran all day Sunday. So I can't complain about that, and I can't believe the second I thought, why haven't I done this yet? It's not like, and I get it, because some people like the resale value of this stuff. That if I modify this one piece of copper, the 9-volt track, that you can't sell it, I don't care. This is, I don't know how I'm going to say this. I love shows. I adore shows. Shows is now literally my most favorite thing to do in this hobby, is to do shows. I like it better than building for the most part. I still love building. Don't get me wrong. Again, this is the scale. Everything's a love, but there's a scale of love. I adore shows. And so anything that makes my life easier at a show, so I can be there and actually have something to talk about and something that's going to draw the people in, I'm going to do. And setting up. And again, so setting up was, I got there at, I think, after 11 o'clock. And we were not allowed onto the floor according to the rules until noon. So I went over to the hotel, I checked in, grabbed my card, walked back. And then I just went over to the guy at the door. I said, can we go in? He said, absolutely. And it's like 11:30. So I grabbed my cart, my dolly, and I grabbed 2 boxes, and I brought them in, and I didn't know where I was supposed to go, but I just assumed that we were in the same spot last year. And I got over to the same spot we were last year, and it was the same size. It looked like the same setup, but I couldn't find somebody on the floor to tell me that this was our spot, because I wasn't going to start unloading stuff. But I just piled the boxes there. I went back to the van after I couldn't find somebody to talk to. And then I brought the second set back, and then all of a sudden there's more Lego people there. Yay! So more Toro people there. And then so I brought all the boxes in, and I also said to myself before I got to the show, I am just going to do exactly. I'm not going to make any determinations. I'm not going to make any ad hoc rules. I'm going to, whatever the crowd wants to do. I'm going to be a complete appeaser this show. Because normally I'm the first one at the show, so I just pick a spot and I set my stuff up. And I always feel like I'm taking over the best spot of the entire layout, the area for my layout. And I don't want to be the prima donna. I do not want people to think I'm a prima donna. So people were starting to set stuff up and moving tables around. I said, do you need help? Because I'm not setting my stuff up yet until we know where it's going to be. Let's move tables around, blah, blah. I said, where do you want me? And there was like, whoever's there, where do you want me? Well, how about there? I said, are you sure? Because I don't want to be people to think, oh, they've got the coveted spot. Because it was, again, the coveted spot. It was the same corner as last year, which is the very first corner that people see when they walk into well, it depends which way you're coming from, but overall, most of the people come from that direction. And that's where the layout was. Now, again, logistically, that's where it should be. Logistically. But again, you can put the layout, and I've said this many, many times, you can put the layout anywhere in that entire zone of where we get to display stuff, and people are going to see it. Right? So you can put it at the back, So when people come in, they can see what's in the front, and oh, there's something in the back, and they go walk all the way around. You can do that. I think about this stuff. Maybe too much in the logistics of this stuff. Technically, you could put it right in the center by the back curtain where it's nowhere near people, and people will still see it. No, that's not really good for a show. But I asked, and I verified that that's the place where people wanted it. I said, okay, fine. So I started setting up, and I took my time. I was in no rush. It wasn't a record that I was trying to break here. But with all seriousness, I think I didn't start setting up the layout till 1 o'clock-ish in the afternoon after getting all the boxes and rearranging the table. So it's 1 o'clock and the show starts at 5. So that gave me 4 hours. And that's perfect, 1 o'clock, 1:30. So I had the majority of the layout set up before 3 o'clock. So that's 2 hours. Of course, there's talking. People are there, good friends. Hey, catch up, hugs, whatever. Good stuff. Team building. So 2 hours later, I have the majority of the entire layout except for the detailing done. I haven't got my fun drawers out yet. I haven't got my my spaceships, my vehicles, and my minifigs and blah blah. So, and then I started detailing, and I started getting interrupted, and even more and more. Fantastic. So by the time 5 o'clock showed up and people are starting to come in, the layout was there with the details. Now I kept on moving minifigs around, and oh, there's another bag of minifigs that I had, and I started putting them out there. Waiting for Sandy to bring the power supply. Fantastic. She showed up with the power supply. That took whatever it is to set that up to get at least something moving, and then diagnosing and blah blah. So, but it was at least 2.5 hours to set up, which is not the longest I've ever taken to set this thing up. 2.5 hours of actual time to set up. I wasn't pushing myself. Taking it down on Sunday, Josh helped. Hour 50. And again, that's with the hugs and people leaving, whatever else like that. So the show stopped at 5. At 5:01, I started slowly taking stuff down because people were working all around me. They had to empty their tables, and I needed their tables to put my stuff on as an internship before I started putting in boxes, as triage, whatever. So I was doing it slowly, and people are still coming over looking at it. So they and the consistent after 5 p.m. I'm gonna sneeze. The consistency after 5 p.m. on all the shows that I've ever done at AnimeNorth is I did not get a chance to see this during the show because I was over there doing my booth, and I wanted to come and see it before I went home, and thankfully it's still up. And I said, oh, I just turned off the power. Do you want to see it moving? Because like I haven't restarted. I grabbed the ship there and I put it in the box, and I was puttering whilst everybody else is taking their stuff down. Because again, I know mine's going to take time. So I'd rather have them take their modules down and whatever and put them in boxes, and I helping where I can. But so most of the stuff is down. I have my tables for my triage. I'm taking the whole thing down, and then so it's 5 to 6:50, so an hour and 50 minutes. Again, taking my time, and then Josh and I had to take it to the van. And by that time I got the thing into the boxes at 6:50, there was hardly anybody on the floor. Most people were gone. The big anime booths were still being taken down and rolled out. The guys were there with the forklifts grabbing all the chairs and tables that were for AnimeNorth. So that's how long I was taking down the curtains down there. So that's how long it took me to get all this stuff done. And I've been every single AnimeNorth. This is what happens. I'm gonna make a point here, and it's not stroking egos. It's not making me whatever. It literally, in the end, not every single time, but in the end, it pays to be nice to people. Period. It pays to be nice. And again, there's context and nuance here. So throughout the show, anytime I saw a worker that worked there sweeping the floors, garbage bags, security, whatever, thank you. I would say thank you for your efforts on our behalf to have a fantastic show. It's what I do. It's just a standard because my mom, when we're doing all our volunteering back in the day, it's show appreciation for the people who show up to run these things. It's something I do naturally. And there was a guy on security, and every time I went through the door, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, thank you. So, and I didn't expect anything from it. I did not. That's not why I do it. I do it because I want them to feel appreciated, because I appreciate what they're doing, and for us to have a good show. Sunday afternoon, we're all packed up, 5:50, and my van is way out in the boondocks. And normally you're supposed to park it not as far from the boondocks, but further close. And so you're walking across the entire building to load your van. And I thought, in the past, I drove my vehicle around to the other side, which is as close to us as we possibly can get, except I'd have to stay out in the parking lot. But it's closer. But I was walking out there to scope it. One of the guys is standing there. I said, "Hey, excuse me, would it be possible, do you think?" And this is like now it's 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Would it be possible if I bring my van right to here by the loading bay door instead of across the parking lot where people, because they get half the parking lot's fenced off for the big trucks, the food trucks, blah blah. So you have to go on the other side, farther away, to park your vehicle. And he says, "I don't see a problem with that. Nobody's using this loading dock right now. Bring your car here." Really? Oh, absolutely. No, that's as close as I ever got, by the way. And I'm going to remind you of my time at Montreal, Niagara Falls Comic Con last year, which I told you a story where the lady, I won't say flirting, but say thanking her profusely for all of her efforts out there in the rain and the sun and blah, blah, and directing traffic and whatever, because, we have to, all these people, vendors, I got all the time in the world for you, lady. So it's exactly the same thing. Hey, pull up the loading dock. Okay. So I go get my van straight to the loading dock, which is not like 50 feet from the layout. So hello. So Josh and I took trips. And then at the last couple trips, I just basically stayed at the van. He just unloaded the boxes and went back for the rest of them with the dolly. So that worked well. It was 25 minutes to load the car and out of the parking lot. So 5:50 from 6:50, we're on the road at 7:15. Done. Drive home. So again, it was serendipity. There was a lot of people there that I talked to that knew our Toro Lug people and RTL people. That was neat. There's people who have seen the layout before at other shows, and they wanted to see what I've changed, and they noticed what I changed. Like that, you cannot believe. I get misty thinking about it. Like it's just a Lego on top of Lego, whatever, it doesn't matter. To me, whatever. But they go, "Oh, you changed that. That wasn't there last year or 3 years ago at whatever." I'm going, "Yeah, I did change that." I remember, and these guys, these are the same people who do rivet counting on trains and stuff. If they're going to do that kind of hobby show, fantastic people who have a joy of appreciation for stuff like this. And I'm going, this is what moves me, is their appreciation, not of the layout. The layout is, you can appreciate it if you want. I like it, but their love of the hobby and whatever they really appreciate. I had some really wonderful talks with some people who were talking about science fiction shows, because the base is based on science fiction, and we were going right back to Forbidden Planet. This is awesome. How many times do I get to talk about Forbidden Planet with somebody? Like this, right? And then going up, because I said, overall, I knew every single science fiction show, TV, actor, character between 1957 and 2000. After 2000, I'm out. There's just far too many. And again, I still have friends who are shocked that I have not watched The Expanse. And I'm sorry about that. But I can't remember what he called it. That's going to bother me now, because we were talking to this one guy, and he says, "Oh, there was a show that had these people." And I'm going, what? It was like in the 80s or 90s, early 90s. I'm going, what? It wasn't Space Above and Beyond. Of course not, because I know that one. It was like another science fiction thing that came out that I never even heard of. I'm going, now I have to go look that up. So it's like, not Plague 7. I know all these things. And it was a show I literally have never heard of. And now I forget what he called it. It's going to bother me now, thinking about it now. So anywho, it was an utterly fantastic show. I had a blast. RTL, I keep on doing that. Toro Lug was fantastic. We had snacks provided, thank you, and a lot of camaraderie and a lot of talking, a lot of appreciation for everybody's stuff and everybody's builds and everybody who they are. And it was a lot of It sort of reminded me a lot like, I'm going to say this, not for me, not for my ego, but when I was running the hobby show, where you guys come and go as you want. I'm going to be here at the show. And so I'm not going to have like a chart of who's here and who's not. Go enjoy the show. And again, this wasn't my show. This is a Torolog show. So I didn't say that to anybody. But there was never a time at the show the entire weekend where it was just me. There was always some people there, which is all we needed. We needed some people, like minimum 5, basically. And there was always at least 5 people there. And I don't remember any kind of organization where people had to fill in the time slots they're going to be there. So I enjoyed that kind of ad hoc, non-conformist, non-filling out forms to figure out when people are going to be there, non-scheduling. It can get hairy, it can get dicey if everybody disappears at the same time, but it never has happened yet. And I'm not sure, again, I'm not in on the executive committee. I'm not sure who said what to who, it doesn't matter. I was going to be there. It's very, very rare that I left the area. I went to dinner with Sandy and Josh one night, I think. But I was there before the show started in the morning to after they shut it down at night. When I showed up Saturday morning, all the blankets were already off the layout. Thank you. My good friend Kelly, she's adorable. So she took the blankets off, but she didn't want to turn anything on because she says, I don't know how to turn this on. So that's perfectly acceptable, because I actually, in order to put the blankets on the layout, I have to start taking things off because I leave things hanging in the air and stuff like that, which is fine. So, but I got there before 10 when the show started, and I turned everything on, put everything back in place. So for me, it was a very smooth show. Again, I don't know behind the scenes. The one for me, nobody else has to do this or has to want this. For me, the one detriment of this show was my 2 very good friends were not there. And again, I'm not going to get into politics. I'm not going to get into the reasons why, but to me, they are value added service to the show. Not just for my friendship, because they're awesome people, but to me, I missed them at this show. But that's all I'm going to say. Because again, everybody's a big person now. They can fight their own battles should they want to fight their own battles. I have my opinions. Other people have their opinions. I missed having them at the show. I think they were both in previous shows very much value added service to the representation of the group. And I'm not going to get into it beyond that. But that was a detriment for me. To me, they were sorely missed. But other than that, fantastic show. Vivian was wonderful. She's our liaison to AnimeNorth, and she did a fantastic job, and everything was as smooth as it possibly be. I met Michael. Michael is one of the people who works for AnimeNorth. He was in charge of the building that we were in, and so we had some really good chats about the logistics and stuff like that. And he was very, very accommodating and very, very much listening to our needs, and always kept on coming by and say, how are we doing? What do we need? And whatever. So I like that from AnimeNorth. And some new Torolog members, had great chats with them, and some old members that I haven't talked to in a while, got some great chats with them. And I'm looking forward to more shows. I was invited to and discussed pretty deeply about going to Fan Expo Fan Expo coming up. The issue is Fan Expo is the weekend we're going camping, so I cannot go to Fan Expo this year. I'll see about next year. Everybody says this, and I honestly do believe it, that this layout would go over fantastically well at Fan Expo. My biggest concern, my hugest concern, is money. I am not renting a hotel in downtown Toronto over Fan Expo, because there's going to be a good $1 zillion for a weekend, and parking. And if we alleviate those 2 points, then I will absolutely be there. Not this year, because I'm going camping, but next year. And so I talked to my good friend Mike, and I even said, if you put me up on your couch, I will absolutely do Fan Expo, because he commutes down to, he lives in Toronto, just up the street, based quote unquote up the street. And I said, that's perfectly acceptable for me. That's like Fan Expo would be a huge cost. We're talking thousands of dollars for food, and I don't mind paying for food, but food, board, and food, lodging, and parking, and I don't want to do the last two. So out of my pocket. So Fan Expo, I also got after I posted all the pictures, my friend over in Quebec asked me if I wanted to bring the layout to his show in, I think, October. And I had to say no, because I'm going to be doing Bricks in the Six in November, and that's 3 times this year. So this one, AnimeNorth, is going to be Bricks in the Six coming up in November, and I got Brickomania in Montreal in August. So it is what it is. I will say I was pretty tired setting it up and taking it down, but during that process, I didn't feel it. It was afterwards, because I'm getting old. So I wouldn't mind adding a few more, like at least maybe one more show per year, to showing. Like I want my core. I want Brickomania, I want Bricks in the Six, and I want AnimeNorth as my core that I do every year. But adding one more, whether it's the Comic-Con or Fan Expo or the other show in Montreal. But I even heard that's farther out, but whatever, we'll discuss it next year. Or in 4 years, when the border becomes less stupid, going down back to Brick Fair, or even visit my big friends down in this is bad, Georgia. And before I get too old to do it. But we are avoiding the U.S. for the foreseeable future. I hear stuff about the word. So I'm going to talk about this in my next video, because we're already 41 minutes into this. The one thing is, as a denouement to this, is my moving art. I plopped it down, turned it on, and it ran literally the entire weekend without any intervention from me whatsoever. It was literally perfect. It was like that's what I want in this thing. Is that gonna happen? I turned the RCX still had its memory from the last time. I plugged it in, turned it on, it ran the entire weekend, and people loved it. I'm gonna say that's just made me happy. And they talked about it, because like it's kind of cute and whatever. So my moving art project there went over very well. So that's it. That's all. I loved the show. I loved the Toro Lug for what they did. All the people that were there. And I'm looking forward to next year. So that's it. That's all. I will talk to you soon.